Good afternoon to everyone. Thank everyone for attending the CATO Spring Conference. Just as a housekeeping, this is being recorded, and if everyone could keep their microphone on mute, that would be great. My name is Steve Alaband, and I am from New Garden Township, and I am the president of CATO. First, I would like to start with recognizing our sponsors and affiliates for their continued support, especially through these trying times over the past couple of years, doing things through Zoom and not being able to interact in person. It's been difficult, but we will get through this, and I look forward to seeing everyone in person for the fall conference. About CATO, CATO was founded in 1907. The association's mission is to promote better knowledge of the rights and duties of township officials by comparing experiences and sharing ideas, and to get to know one another through friendly communication. That's our mission statement. We meet regularly on the fourth Thursday of every month. For the past couple of years, it's been through Zoom. When we go back live, I think we'll be at 1025 Paoli Pike. Our agendas and are posted on the CATO website. There's a lot of good information on the website for township supervisors to look, and a lot of resources there. Introduction of the 2022 CATO board. We have Dave Connors from London Grove Township. He is the first vice president. We have Murph Wysocki from Tredyffrin Township. He is the second vice president. We have Candy Miller from West Nottingham Township. She is our acting treasurer. We have Christopher Bushkowski. He is our secretary for 2022. We have John McHugh from Honeybrook Township. He is a member. We have Mark Freed from Tredyffrin Township. He is a member. Paul Mullen from Callan Township. He is a member. Jim Morks from North Coventry Township is the member. Our two alternates are Barb D'Angelo from Wallace Township and Ashley Gagne from West Goshen Township. Our borough representative from Downingtown Borough is Alex Rakoff. And then we have our executive director and past president, Ernie Holland. I wanted to give a special thanks to our couple members of our education committee. Carol DeWolf, who has worked very hard on putting the conference information together. Carol is also she was on the CATO board for many years. We have Isaac Thomas, who is with Assured Partners, and we have Amanda Sunquest from the law firm of Unruh Turner, Burke and Freeze. All three of these have put a lot of effort into pulling this off and working with our executive director and secretary. Few announcements. We will be starting a bi-monthly coffee meeting, and that's going to start in April. We're thinking, I think, April 12th, but we will get that information out as soon as we fine tune it. It would be a 1 hour brief little like mini seminar. And I think the first one, Ernie's working on a topic, but again, if you have any suggestions for topics that you would like to hear for the months to come, that would be great. You can let us know. Some of the things that CATO has been working on over the past year include, with our most recent edition, we are going to be working with Avondale Borough, and basically it would be building a stronger borough from ground up, dealing with meeting process, policies, procedure manuals, and the likes. Ernie has made contact with the University of Pennsylvania, the Fells Institute for Government, and hopefully they can help them out and sort of get the borough on the right track going forward. Upcoming events, we have the PSATS conference on April 24th and 27th. That's in Hershey. CCATO will be sharing the hospitality suite with Montgomery County, and we hope to see you there. If you do go up there, please stop by the hospitality suite and join in for some networking. With that, we have a pretty full agenda. We have Marian Moskowitz, the chair of Chester County Board of Commissioners, Carolyn Comita, Pennsylvania State Senator, Jessica Saul, Assistant Director of CCIU on the Broadband Project, Joe Gardis, Director of Government Relations from PSATS. They're going to give us some updates. Our keynote program will be municipalities and the dynamically evolving EMS and mental health sectors. And that is a very, very interesting topic with the hospital closures, the labor shortages, and just how we deliver and receive care for EMS. We have 3 breakout sessions. The first is on cybersecurity, and the second would be creating places for people and nature. And the last is climate action and municipal sustainable practices being implemented. And with that, I am going to move right on, and I would like to introduce our County Commissioner, Marian Moskowitz. Thank you and enjoy tonight's program.
Hello, everyone, and I thank you for allowing me to share an overview of the county today. As Commissioners, Josh, Michelle, and I feel a great responsibility for maintaining and improving the quality of life for our residents here in Chester County. Our county is widely known as a place where people want to live, go to school, work, play, and retire. And while it would be great to be able to take the glory for the many accolades, we know that these wouldn't be achieved without the support and dedication of many people. Those in the private sector, the volunteer sector, and especially all of you who serve in local government. Here in Chester County, our efforts to work together and support each other directly contribute to our attraction as a great place to be. So today, I will focus my comments on a few chapters of our overall State of the County message, chapters that are relevant to and rely upon our governmental partnership. But before I continue, I do want to say a few words about the impact that the closure of Jennersville and Brandywine hospitals have had and continue to have on our communities. We, like many others, were very disappointed that Canyon Atlantic Partners failed to follow through with the purchase of the 2 hospitals. This on-again, off-again sale cost precious time in our own efforts to return emergent care, acute care, and behavioral health services to Jennersville and Brandywine. Since the sale fell through, we have renewed our efforts toward a solution, helping in whatever way we can to facilitate a buyer or buyers for the hospitals, while helping to ensure that crucial healthcare services continue. Our staff and emergency services have been coordinating communication with and providing support for first responders, especially emergency medical services. And our human services staff have been working non-stop to make sure behavioral health services are maintained for those who need them. Restoring the services that Jennersville and Brandywine hospitals provided prior to closure continues to be a top priority for us. Chester County has a long-standing tradition of resource protection and maintaining the outstanding quality of life that is valued by our residents. As part of that tradition, we recognize the importance of addressing our carbon footprint and maintaining a sustainable future for generations to come, which is why we researched, drafted, and last October approved our Climate Action Plan, just 1 month after Hurricane Ida devastated areas of our county. The Climate Action Plan's overriding goal is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in Chester County by 80% by the year 2050. It is an ambitious goal, but necessary, because we must address global climate change at every level of government and through collaboration if we're going to create a healthier planet and maintain our quality of life. The Climate Action Plan supports smart growth with the new potential for jobs in renewable energy sectors. It helps our residents and businesses save money through more energy-efficient vehicles and homes. And it improves our health through promoting cleaner air and water and by creating more opportunities for walking, biking, and recreation. Last week, we announced the appointment of Rachel Griffin as Chester County's new Sustainable Director. Some of you will know Rachel through her work with our Planning Commission. And in this new role, she will be able to assist you with all sustainability, clean energy, and greenhouse gas reduction plans. Also announced last week, the Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy, or CPACE program, is now active in Chester County and accepting applications for clean energy projects. CPACE makes it easier for businesses to finance energy-efficient projects and avoid financing barriers that prevent them from getting the projects off the ground. We encourage you to find out more about the benefits of CPACE and share it with all businesses in your municipality. Next, let me tell you about Complete Streets, which is an important step in giving transportation choices that increase safety and efficiency and that enhance social equity. In other words, Complete Streets is planning our streets to be designed, retrofitted, and maintained to meet the transportation needs of all users, that is safe and environmentally responsible, and that offers the option to walk, cycle, drive, or take public transportation to get where you need to go. Our Planning Commission has set measures to assess the impact of Complete Streets, from increased miles of bicycle lanes and sidewalks to the number of new and improved transit connections that meet walkways, and the number of municipalities that adopt Complete Streets of their own. The simple addition of sidewalks to places where no sidewalks currently exist will expand access to transportation networks for people without cars. And when you add bike lanes, this increases opportunities for physically active travel, creating a healthier community. But it's not just our physical health that improves. Complete Streets encourages better access to community facilities, services, and jobs. And we know that connectivity is very important to the future economic health of our county. For all of us who have become increasingly frustrated with our traffic bottlenecks, here is the story of our roadways. Many of our highways, like Route 1 in the south, the Route 30 bypass around Downingtown and Coatesville, and Route 422 around Pottstown, were built 50 to 60 years ago. And as we know, they don't last forever. Time and extremes in weather take their toll. The recently passed Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act will deliver much-needed transportation funding to Chester County, including support for the eastern portion of Route 30 bypass project, our top highway improvement priority. Rebuilding Route 30 will help to reduce congestion, decrease maintenance needs, and increase safety in one of our busiest highway corridors. The increased federal funding will also help us to address some of our most prominent highway bottlenecks at the intersection of Route 100 and the 30 bypass in Exton, and the High Street interchange at the southern end of the Route 202 expressway in Westchester. Moving from cars to trains, construction on the new Coatesville train station is well underway and is expected to be complete in 2024. And we are currently working with SEPTA to ensure that they will be able to keep their pledge of returning service to the city of Coatesville once the new train station is complete. Heading east, plans to relocate the Downingtown train station nearest to the Keystone Corridor's intersection with Brandywine Avenue are currently in the preliminary engineering phase, so watch this space for more future updates. And finally, a few weeks ago, Chester County joined with Berks County and Montgomery County to take the next step in restoring passenger rail between Reading and Philadelphia. The Schuylkill River Passenger Rail Authority is proposed to replace the Tri-County Passenger Rail Committee that has, for more than a year now, been exploring the most efficient way to restore train service to the region. This exciting project actually began a few years ago with the Phoenixville Mayor's Task Force on Rail Transportation. The commissioners from all 3 counties will be holding public hearings in April to review and approve the new passenger rail authority. We believe that a rail service in places like Reading, Pottstown, and Phoenixville could generate more than $1 billion in new property development and increase existing property values, which leads to thousands more jobs as well. And now, to end on a topic that everyone appreciates, an update on Chester County's trails. Even before the pandemic, we were expanding our county trails, and now we are looking to advance development of the circuit, Greater Philadelphia region's multi-use trail network. Starting with the Chester Valley Trail, we will begin construction from the current most western point in Exton and extend it 1 mile westward to the Oakland's Corporate Center. Later this year, we will send out an RFP for engineering services to redesign a 1 mile extension of Lancaster County's Enola Low-Grade Trail into the borough of Acton, thanks to a grant from the DVRPC Regional Trails Program. And we are eagerly awaiting the opportunity to develop the P&T corridor, which is currently owned by Norfolk Southern, to extend the Chester Valley Trail into Downingtown and beyond. And I will leave you all with an invitation to the official opening of the final segment of the Schuylkill River Trail in Chester County, between where the trail currently ends in Parkerford and the US 422 bridge in Kenilworth. We invite everyone to join us this April on Earth Day to celebrate and cut the ribbon on this final section. Hi everybody, this is Marion. My video I don't think is working, but I am here and I hope you enjoyed the video. There's a lot to share and I was excited to have the opportunity to let you know everything that's going on in our world. I do want to say, when I see everything that we're doing and having you as partners, I'm just so grateful for each and every one of you. Every subject that I talked about, we're partnering with all of you in one way or another. And I just want you to know that I truly appreciate CCATO and the work you do. Many people don't know this, but when I was younger, my second full-time permanent job, I was the assistant to the township manager in Falls Township, which is a first-class township. And so I do appreciate all the work you do. I know how hard it is and all the obstacles you have to deal with day in and day out. And I'm excited to share this with you. And please feel free to reach me. If you have any questions at all, I am always here for you. Thanks very much. Thank you to Ernie too.
And now we'll have State Senator Carolyn Comita joining us. She is currently in Boston and is having video difficulties, but I believe that she's got sound capabilities.
I do indeed. Hello, Ernie. Can you hear me?
I can indeed.
Oh, good. Very good. And hi. Hi, Steve. And hi, everyone. Hello, Marion. I must say that your video, Marion, was so inspiring. And as I was watching it, I thought, how proud am I and are all of us to be residents and community leaders in Chester County. And as you said, you know, we all work together so well. And it is really so uplifting to see in good times and in difficult times how we come together, we solve problems, and you know, we're really shaping a healthy future for everyone in our county and beyond. So thank you for inspiring us and for your leadership, Marion. And thank you, Ernie and Steve and CCATO, for your leadership as well. And I join Marion in thanking all of the township officials and managers for being here, for your service to our communities in Chester County. And it is really a delight to be with you once again. So as Marion mentioned, we are now 2 years into the pandemic. And as we look to the future with optimism and hope, we must continue to work together to ensure a sustained and successful recovery. The challenges facing our townships, our municipalities, schools, businesses, families, and communities have been unprecedented, and our recovery is ongoing. The good news is we now have considerable resources at our disposal. When I spoke to you at this time last year, Congress had just passed the American Rescue Plan. And since then, Congress also passed the bipartisan infrastructure law known as the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Together, these measures mark once in a generation investments to advance our recovery and to strengthen our nation's infrastructure, our emergency preparedness, and our economic competitiveness. So again, I want to express my appreciation to Representative Chrissy Houlihan and our other federal representatives for their support of these and other very important initiatives in Congress. I'd like to share a little bit about our Pennsylvania state budget. We are now in budget season, of course, in Harrisburg, and Pennsylvania is on solid financial footing. Thanks to federal American Rescue Plan funds, sound fiscal management, and higher than expected revenues, the Commonwealth is projected to end this fiscal year with a more than $6.5 billion surplus. That's with a B, so $6.5 billion surplus, unprecedented. Having recently completed department budget hearings before the Senate Appropriations Committee, there is no doubt that we have an opportunity to make bold and smart investments in our future. Investments like a $1.55 billion increase in funding for basic education, which includes $300 million in level up funding to the 100 highest need school districts in Pennsylvania. And we have a couple of those school districts in Chester County. An investment in nearly $37 million increase in county mental health funding to support critical behavioral health services, as well as significant funds to support public health infrastructure, substance abuse treatment, suicide prevention programs, and healthcare staffing. We have $450 million proposed for Growing Greener 3 to establish vital conservation, recreation, preservation, and community revitalization projects, and to address the impacts of climate change. Those are all important parts of the governor's budget plan that I fully support. I'm hopeful that we will be able to make those and other investments, including much needed support for transportation infrastructure and community revitalization, while planning for the potential uncertainty of the future. The current state budget plan does not raise taxes. And there is a bipartisan support to cut Pennsylvania's corporate net income tax rate, which unfortunately is one of the highest in the nation. The current proposal calls for reducing it from 9.99% to 7.99% next year, and then even further in upcoming years with a path to 4.99%. The budget process appears to be on track, and I'm optimistic that we will pass a budget plan on time this year. As you may remember, last year, the legislature passed a budget that sat on almost all of our ARP funding. Now, we have until the end of 2024 to expend the ARP funds. Given some different projections from the Independent Fiscal Office on how inflation and other factors may negatively impact our long-term budget outlook, I fully appreciate the need to put aside some savings for the future. But the budget must also reflect our responsibility to do the very best we can for our communities right now. And that includes setting up all Pennsylvanians for success in a post-pandemic world. Let me talk a little bit about infrastructure. Earlier, I mentioned the Federal Infrastructure Act. We've received a lot of inquiries about accessing those funds. The latest update from our Senate Democratic Appropriations Committee is that the funds will become available soon, and that the omnibus budget that was recently signed was needed before most of the money could start flowing. Resources also are available online that list eligibility requirements, information for grant funding opportunities, and when they're expected to open. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Law Guidebook is available at www.whitehouse.gov/build. Under the act, Pennsylvania is expected to receive billions in total funding for the following: highway improvements, bridge repairs, EV charging stations, broadband connectivity upgrades, capping abandoned mines, drinking water infrastructure, and support for airports. I also want to mention that earlier this week, it was announced that the Commonwealth will receive $5 million through the Federal Infrastructure Law for flood mitigation. Those funds will go to the Swift Current Initiative that supports properties that are covered by a policy through the National Flood Insurance Program, NFIP, and have sustained repetitive losses. That program, available through FEMA, opens on April 1st. Local governments have a role in that application process. I know a number of our municipalities are already preparing for the program to open. Please contact my office for more information. And while we're on the subject of flooding, as Commissioner Moskowitz said, this summer will be the first anniversary of Hurricane Ida. A new study on the potential impact of increased flooding found that Pennsylvania ranked second behind Florida for potential structural damage. 3 of our major cities, Philadelphia, Harrisburg, and Pittsburgh, are at serious risk of office, retail, and residential damage. And as we know, our suburban communities also face severe impacts from flooding. The growing impacts of climate change mean more precipitation, more extreme and unpredictable weather, and more flooding. I continue to support Pennsylvania joining the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, known as RGGI, which would bring in hundreds of millions of dollars a year in proceeds while reducing our carbon emissions. I also want to note that other states like Virginia have dedicated RGGI funds to effective investments in flood mitigation and prevention. And lastly, RGGI would also support investments in clean energy and energy efficiency, making us more energy independent and reducing our reliance on fossil fuels. Thank you again for all your work on behalf of our residents, municipalities, and local communities. And thank you to our county commissioners, our federal representatives, and my fellow state legislative colleagues. Our Chester County delegation has an excellent working relationship across all levels of government, and we're committed to working with you and for you in the spirit of bipartisan cooperation and collaboration. I also want you to know that my staff and I are always here for you. We are here to help and assist you in any way that we can. You can always reach me at 610-692-2112 or via email at senatorcommitta@pasenate.com. I wish you a very enjoyable and productive conference. I send my best wishes to everyone. Please take good care of yourselves, and thank you so much for all you do to care for the people in our communities. Thank you.
And now we're joining Jessica. Hi, Jessica.
Hi, thank you so much for the opportunity today to bring an update to the township on all the townships on our project to assess broadband services in Southern Chester County. So I am going to pull up a quick set of PowerPoint slides. Hopefully it'll go to the correct view. Back in, I believe it was last May, thanks to the county commissioners and Pat Bakovitz, the Chester County Intermediate Unit received a $200,000 grant to assess in the region that is in the footprint of Avon Grove, Oxford area, Kennett Consolidated, and Unionville Childs Ford school districts to assess who's being served, not served, and who's underserved when it comes to broadband. So the CCIU put out an RFP, and we hired the firm Magellan Advisors, and they began the work in December. So we're not advancing, here we go. So I'm going to give you a quick project overview, talk to you about the survey that Ernie Holling was so kind to distribute to all of you, and the next steps in our project. So we began with stakeholder engagement, in which we're trying to reach out to key institutions, organizations, community members throughout Southern Chester County region to make them aware of the project and what we are trying to do. And as we had seen with the pandemic, when everything switched to virtual and people had to work from home, kids had to do school from home, we needed telehealth, it really shined a light on the gap in services throughout the county. We decided to focus on the Southern Chester County region because Southern Chester County Opportunity Network really did the work. Jim Mercante and Joan Holliday, especially, Whitney Hoffman, Dan McGuire from Kennett. They worked really hard to bring awareness to the issue, bring the stakeholders together, and get the funding for this project. So we're talking to key people to get a true assessment of the issue. And we're also currently rolling out a survey that can be taken online or on paper to let us know where people have gaps in service. There's a speed test for the online versions. And it's also helping us plot a map where we're going to be able to see where the speeds are stronger, not available, and just anywhere that could be improved. We're also doing a needs analysis, which we want to see which areas, what pockets are available, what the demographics are, and try to find what type of broadband would be best in those areas. And then moving forward, we're going to actually get from Magellan a business plan and a financial analysis and funding analysis so we can see how to build an infrastructure that's going to bring broadband connectivity to the region. And then overall, this project is hopefully going to be a playbook that we can roll out to the rest of the county and just really work hard to close the gap on the broadband access. So as you can see by this slide, which I'm not going to read everything to you, is we're reaching out to key stakeholders, industry partners, the school districts, the technology directors have been instrumental in getting the word out and building support and connecting us with families. We've worked with different government agencies. Many people on this call have been reached out to, and we're continuing to just spread the word because this is an effort for all residents and businesses in that area. So we just within the last few weeks have rolled out a survey that is in both English and Spanish on paper, because these key institutions that we've spoken to are working directly with people at food banks, at healthcare centers, and working and meeting people and trying to help them to fill out the survey. Our biggest barrier right now is people, if they're not understanding why we're doing this, are hesitant to give their addresses. We're working to let people know this is anonymous, and it's to have a mapping data to bring awareness to what's actually happening. So we're trying to identify which areas have the poorest coverage and map them, but we're actually mapping all coverage and working to develop solutions to improve broadband access in these areas. So here's where we would love if we could get some support, is that the email, I was gonna say, the surveys have been emailed to all the township managers. And if you can distribute these to your community, post them on websites and urge people to complete them, it would be incredibly helpful. We also want community leaders to inform their stakeholders that this is going to help, this survey is going to help us better understand their connectivity and how we can help the region. We are also struggling to get some mapping data from PICO, other service providers. Crown Castle provided their fiber maps, but we're still working to get Armstrong data, Verizon, and Comcast maps. See, yes, and any way you can help us distribute the survey would be much appreciated. I'm going to show you so far, hold on. I want to show you the beginning of our efforts with the data that we are starting to plot the map. And we can see one of the key pieces we have is all the hotspots that have been distributed by the full 4 school districts. So these tiny little diamonds you're seeing are where people need hotspots to connect, to be able to do school when it's required to be virtual or to do their homework. And you can see the redder the shade, so the warmer the shade, the more hotspots in different areas. So we have some key spots that really have a high density of hotspots delivered. The blue you're seeing here is Crown Castle's fiber, which they were kind enough to share with us because they are the layer 1 provider for all of the school districts. One other piece I wanted to show you as well is we are starting to get responses on the survey. We have the week of the 15th of March, we had 500 distributed. We had several that were invalid because they did not provide an address, but we have since tweaked the survey to make certain fields required. And as you can see, we're no longer receiving invalid surveys. Paper surveys need to be mailed back to me at the CCIU. So far there are only 2. And the cellular survey is also getting some traction, but we do need more information so we can plot that data for you. So back to the PowerPoint. Oop, we were here. Sorry, everybody. So again, thank you for the opportunity today. Thank you for any efforts you've made to help us move this forward. Here is my contact information if you want to reach out to me with any questions about the survey, but I'm also, if there are any questions, I'm more than happy to answer any questions people have.
Well, it looks like right now the audience is going to be quiet, and we're going to,
Okay.
we are going to have on April 12th a program with you and the consultants for over coffee at 8 o'clock in the morning. And you will be the first in that series of new programs that CATO's offering. And now I'll get out of the way and let Joe get on so he can get with his program. Thank you.
Thank you, Ernie, and thank you, Steve, and thank you all for sharing part of your conference with me and allowing me to give an update from PSATs. Very much appreciate your time. It's been a busy few months here at PSATs. We're just getting finished with our boot camp sessions that we've held across the state and began in December. We're teaching newly elected township supervisors from every nook and cranny of the Commonwealth, and teaching them, giving them the information they need to help be supervisors. And we've had a great turnout, and now we're focusing on the PSATs conference, which Steve mentioned will be April 24th through the 27th in Hershey. We just did a walkthrough yesterday, so it's getting real. After 2 years of having to cancel or go virtual, we're all coming together again, and really hope to see everybody in Hershey in April. Special plug for a selfish plug. I am holding my first legislative reception for PSATs on the Tuesday night, the 26th. It's going to be a little different this year. We're going to have it at Hershey, and we're going to be asking the legislators to come out to us to join us. So I could use some help, not only with you attending, but also asking your legislators and your senators. It's always tough to follow Senator Committa. She does such a great job. But we hope to have a great turnout for the legislative reception on Tuesday night of the conference, and could use your help getting those out, getting those invitations out to the members, and making sure they come and join us. The House is right now scheduled to be in session that week, and the Senate is not. But they've had to change the schedule around a little bit, and we'll keep you up to date on what's going on. I know you have an ambitious agenda, and again, the senator did such a great job, and Jessica did with their presentations. A couple things I wanted to highlight real quick. The House and Senate right now, the Supreme Court just set the dates for the petitions. They have a shortened petition period. So there's you might be getting a lot of calls from your members and your senators looking for signatures. The court set the deadline for the 28th next week, and the state extended it another 24 hours. The deadline is the 29th. To get petition signatures in. So they're very busy right now trying to get that done, and a few session days have been canceled next week in both chambers to give the representatives and the senators a time to get out and get that done, since it was an abbreviated period. The senator mentioned since we last met, the governor gave his budget proposal the beginning of February, a $43.7 billion budget. And the House and Senate just finished up their budget hearings. And I share the optimism that the senator shared with us, that I think we're going to have an early budget. There was some hope to having it done in May. I think my bet's early June. But I think everyone's anxious to get back to their district with this being an election year. We're hopeful that will get done. The senator mentioned there's a lot of federal funds on the table. So the process is going to be a little easier, a little less painful this time around. And part of that, I wanted to jump on Jessica's presentation. Recently, the governor and the legislature passed, and the governor signed Act 96, which is setting up the state's broadband authority. One of the things that Jessica mentioned that was highlighted during the pandemic were the areas of the Commonwealth where they are unserved or underserved, or where they have capacity issues. And this broadband authority was set up rather quickly. It was modeled after the Commonwealth Financing Authority, if you're familiar with that. The governor's budget secretary, Greg Thal, kicked it off in the middle of February 15th. Each of the legislative caucuses has a member, and Greg Thal sits as the chair. And it was set up to basically access a lot of this federal money for broadband that's out there, so they can draw those dollars down and hopefully help. And I know Jessica mentioned that there's a survey. I know there's a lot of surveys running around and people are somewhat surveyed out, but it's so important that you help out by filling out those surveys so we can access these dollars and target them where it's most needed. Real quick, a couple of things. I usually start off with a cybersecurity alert, but I know you're going to do a deep dive in that later in the agenda, so there's really no need to get too far down there. I'm going to give an update on ARP funding. And the one thing that I'm asked by our staff is to please, on the cyber side, there are a lot of phishing scams that are going out right now to townships, saying that you need to renew your SAMS number or your portal number and give them $49.95 or whatever. You do not have to do that. It is a free service provided by the U.S. government. So just be careful of scamming, phishing expeditions, they call them, that are trying to access your passcodes. No one from the U.S. Treasury is ever going to ask for your passcode for the ARP money. The first reporting period is going to be April 30th for the ARP money. Treasury has got the portal up. There's been some issues with the portal. We're working with them. You can always look for updates on our website, www.psats.org. We're working with our counterpart, the National Association of Township and Towns, and the U.S. Department of Treasury, to kind of work out some of the kinks that have been presented on logins for the portal. Our advice right now, everyone I believe on here is going to be under the $10 million threshold. So our advice is to take the standard deduction. It just the revenue calculator is unnecessary. And by taking that the under $10 million deduction, it really gives you a lot of flexibility in how you spend those dollars. Again, keeping proper records as always, to make sure that the funds and the restrictions that are on there can't be used to backfill a tax cut or backfill pension obligations. The restrictions we have listed on our up-to-date fact sheet on the website. But we're getting a lot of questions right now on ARP on this first reporting deadline, which again will be April 30th, and that's through the Treasury portal. If anybody has any questions, please call us. Holly and Katie have been fielding quite a few calls, making sure everybody's up to date and working through some of the kinks that are out there. As I mentioned on the petitions that are being signed, we're in an election cycle. We've already had 5 senators that have either announced they're not running or running for another office, and I think we're up to the latest count is 22 representatives that have decided they are not going to run for re-election or running for another office. So regardless, before the election even happens, we're guaranteed to see a lot of new faces in Harrisburg next legislative cycle, which will begin in January after the election. So it's going to be an interesting time for us here. A lot of new people to meet from across the state as they come into Harrisburg, and educate them on local government. And thankfully, we've got folks like Senator Committa who have done a great job working with us in local government, and always have an open ear to us, and a great staff as well. Real quick, just want to run through some of the bills that we've talked about before and are still out there. We're still trying to push over the finish line before this legislative session ends. We still have legal advertising bills that are out there. Always good to hear legal advertising horror stories that I can use. We're all supportive of local media. However, the costs and the printing times and turnarounds have become very problematic for our members across the state. And we're just trying to get some more options added to the table so we can relieve some of those pressures. Senate Bill 478, allowing to contract for services when no bids are received. We're very close on getting that one done, and hopefully have that done here in the next few weeks, actually. We're continuing to work on the right to know laws, both the vexatious requesters, where we have folks that are just bombarding our right to know officers, almost using the right to know law as a weapon to bog down our folks, and again, wasting a lot of taxpayer dollars. We're working on that bill and continuing to work on the commercial fees bill. I see you're going to be talking about EMS and mental health sectors. We're working right now. The Senate has a bill, Senate Bill 698, and there is a discussion that is ongoing on the topic of fire and EMS county authorities. PSATS has been in the middle of that discussion. We have some concerns. We're working through those with the authors of the bill, and trying to make sure that whatever is done on the fire and EMS side, I know that both services are stressed, and we want to make sure that we provide help that everybody can agree is going to be useful for our townships on that front. I wanted to mention fireworks. I'm getting a lot of inquiries on the firework law with issues with that. I testified 2 months ago now before a joint House and Senate committee on fireworks. We are getting good feelings that the House and the Senate are going to move forward with some modifications to the law to put some more teeth in there, to up the fines, to allow for some more limitations on the fireworks use. I know there's some folks out there that want a full repeal. Right now the temperature, I don't think a full repeal is in the cards, but we are trying to make sure that you all have the ability to put some sensible restrictions on the fireworks use, and make sure that you're able to enforce the law that's already on the books, and provide for safety, and make sure your residents are covered there. The senator also mentioned transportation. Transportation is going to not only take up a lot of time at the end of this session, but I think we're going to swing into the new session as well. Dave Sanko, as I reported, I think last time we met, was the only local government representative on the Governor's Transportation Revenue Options Commission. I think everybody's seen the recommendations that are out there. They're being hotly debated right now in Harrisburg on how we do that. Our goal here at PSATS is to make sure what comes out of that is that we protect the local share for local governments to maintain our roads and bridges. The senator also mentioned the bipartisan infrastructure law. There's $4 billion in federal transportation dollars over the next 5 years that are going to be coming to Pennsylvania, and 1.6 billion is going to be set aside for bridges, which is very welcome. There's also going to be there also is a special cutout of that for off-system local bridges. And there's an incentive, unlike other federal dollars that will require a 20% match. The local funding for bridges will not require a 20% match. So it's welcome news. I know that, again, going back to ARP funding that your communities have received, the number one question we got was, can we spend it on roads and bridges? And again, hit the under $10 million deduction, and you should be good to go there. But this additional federal money is going to be very, very welcome coming up. Please check out our website, psats.org. We have a lot of the information that I just went over there in a little more detail. or you can always call or email. I'm jgerdes@psats.org. And also subscribe to our morning news document. We've trimmed it down to a digest form where we're trying to hit those topics where you can pick and choose where you want to dive a little deeper, and be cognizant of all the emails that are coming your way on a daily basis so that you can drill down where you need to. With that, I will pass it back to Ernie. Again, thank you all very much for giving me a few moments. And I really look forward to seeing everybody in person in Hershey in April. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Thanks, Ernie. Next, the keynote program. I would like to introduce Chaz Brogan and Pat Bokovitz. Chaz is the president of Chester County EMS Council, and Pat is the director of Chester County Department of Human Services. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Chaz Brogan. I'm the president of Chester County's EMS Council. I work full-time for Good Fellowship Ambulance in Westchester, where I'm the director of operations, and I'm the elected president of Chester County's EMS Council. I'm going to take the first half hour here and then turn it over to Director Bakovitz to kind of follow up on the human services side. Just give me 1 second here and I'll get my presentation up. So you should all be able to see the screen, hopefully. Just a few quick slides here, really discussing where we are today. With the hospital closures, there's been some pretty significant impacts on the EMS agencies in Chester County. So just want to provide a quick update, some positives that are happening, as well as some data. So a little bit about the EMS Council. Not everyone is super familiar. We work similar to a government. We have representatives from every EMS agency in the county, as well as EMS consumers, our hospitals, other public safety agencies, including fire and police, that all have a vested interest in the provision of EMS within Chester County. We are the uniform voice of EMS for Chester County to local and county government. We often work with Chester County Department of Emergency Services on a daily basis on day-to-day EMS impacts, looking for our feedback or our opinions on things that impact EMS delivery in this county. So a little bit about EMS in Chester County, just because we're really looking at it from the entire region. The majority are fire company based, so our fire companies also provide the EMS service. We do have one hospital base still. Tower Health does have an EMS service in Western Chester County based in Coatesville. That did not close with the hospitals. They are still in service and providing EMS service to the western portion of Chester County. And then we have some independent agencies. The agency I work for is one of them. We are a standalone EMS agency that does not provide any fire services. So a few different delivery models here, but we all work together really well. You're probably most familiar with the service that covers your area. And again, we're still running into people that believe that this is a tax-based service. So we're really trying to get the message out that we are a fee-for-service organization most of the time, where we're billing the patient's insurance for our revenue. So where are we at today following these hospital closures? Certainly these increased expenses, longer transport times, and wall times. So you're going to hear me mention wall times a few times here today. Wall times are the wait time inside of the emergency departments while we're waiting for a bed to become available for the ambulance patient. So they're referred to as wall times. Longer transports, longer wall times are all resulting in increased fuel, increased maintenance, increased supplies, and increased medications. We have several cases where the EMS providers actually had to continue their treatment inside of our emergency departments because the patient needed more medication or more treatment, and there just wasn't a hospital bed available. So that is happening, unfortunately. I'll show you some of that data here in a little bit. It's getting better. Rising pay rates to recruit and retain EMS providers. I'm going to talk about that a few times today. That seems to be probably the glaring issue right now. Is we are dealing with the staffing crisis just as everybody else is, as well as rising pay rates. And it's becoming a really big challenge because we don't have the revenue to support those higher pay rates. Volunteerism continues to decrease. We're putting tremendous amount of resources into maintaining, recruiting and retaining our volunteers, but we continually see decreases year after year, volunteer staffing. More reliance on mutual aid. So this is when a neighboring EMS service has to come into your area to cover a call. So obviously staffing challenges are adding to this. There are certainly days where all EMS agencies can't staff all of their available units. They're relying on neighboring services to come in and cover calls. Those increased transport times to further away hospitals. That ambulance is gone now for an additional 45 minutes, 90 minutes, sometimes longer because they're going to a further away hospital. That's resulting in the neighboring EMS agency having to come in to cover a call in your area. Again, I talked about increased wall times there. If they're waiting in the ER with their patient because there's not a bed available, they're not available to take another call back in their home area. So the council and really Department of Emergency Services as well, we put a lot of focus into the mental health of our EMS providers. So we've identified this for years, that this is a growing problem. And we're doing everything we can to really reduce their stress levels. However, since these hospitals have closed, these longer transports, these increased wait times, all of that is increasing the stress levels of our providers. And it's something that we're monitoring. We have great resources in this county for them, but it's just certainly something we're seeing an uptick in and some concern there. Obviously, general inflation is causing an impact. It's becoming difficult for EMS providers to afford, life in Chester County, our housing costs, and just overall inflation. And that increased risk of provider injury. Really want to touch on behavioral health patients with that. So if our ambulance is coming from the western and southern portions of Chester County and have more contact with behavioral health patients, there's definitely an increased likelihood that they may be injured by a violent patient or somebody not cooperative. So that is one of our concerns that we're looking at, and we're taking steps to try to prevent that from happening. So I'd be remiss if I didn't mention some of the positives that have come out of the last couple of months here. The EMS Council is working with several county departments and county government, all of our hospitals, all of our remaining hospitals, and some community organizations as well, to just really mitigate the impacts that we're seeing and share information. We do meetings weekly, monthly. I feel like every week we are on some kind of meeting with one of these organizations to share information. So that's been really beneficial. I've never seen the information sharing be as positive as it has been over the last couple months. The other first responder associations, so fire police, all have associations that represent their personnel. We are working with those other associations and their leaderships, again, on a weekly basis to share information, which is going exceptionally well. It's been really nice to see the partnership and everybody working together. And lastly, EMS agencies working together themselves. We've really seen an uptick in EMS agencies supporting each other and working with each other, which is really good to see. If you've been a township supervisor for more than a couple of years, sometimes there is some competition and some dislike of neighboring agencies. We've really seen significant improvement in that over the last couple of years. But really over the last 6 months, as we've dealt with these challenges, we're really happy to say we've seen some improvement there. So one of the questions we keep getting asked is, where are these patients going and how are we choosing where we take these patients? So the number one thing is the condition of the patient. If the patient is in a very severe medical condition or has a severe injury, they need to go to the closest appropriate facility, unless they need specialized care. So that's really our number one. We do try to take into account patient request. Everybody has their preferred hospital. We want to take patients where they want to go. It just has to make sense. And lastly, hospital status. So within Chester County, we use two terms to try to identify the status of our hospitals: high patient volume and divert. High patient volume is just an FYI, we are super busy. There may be wait times. If you need to be admitted, you may wait in the emergency department for several hours before that happens. Whereas divert means the hospital is closed. They can't accept any more patients. In Chester County, divert is only used for an infrastructure failure or some kind of safety issue. So it's very rare that we use that divert closure terminology. We really say on high patient volume. And again, we always try to accommodate the patient's request. So I want to just show a little data, and this is a little busy here, but I'll walk you through it as we go. So where were the patients going and where are they going now? So we just took a sampling from September of last year. And what we found is about 30% of these patients were going to Brandywine and Jennersville. And then the rest were kind of spread out. Chester County and Paoli generally take the majority of the patients within our county. They're obviously in more populated areas, so that makes sense. So where are these patients going now? And I can't take credit for this data. This data comes from our Department of Emergency Services, who has done a wonderful job of keeping us aware of what's going on. So the positive here is that 30% of patients that went to Brandywine and Jennersville by ambulance, I should stress this is all by ambulance, not by private vehicle. It balanced nicely over all of the other hospitals in the region. So you can see all the hospitals had a 5 to 7% uptick in patient volume. Now there were impacts from that, but I think the positive here is the EMS agencies and the public has done a really good job of just kind of spreading the volume out over the remaining hospitals. So I will mention, you see CHOP King of Prussia on here. CHOP opened a new acute care hospital in King of Prussia in February. So far only about 1% of the volume has gone there, our pediatric volume, but that's been extremely helpful. And we'll talk about when we get to behavioral health too. But we do have an actual new hospital in our region, which is good news. So this is kind of talking about overall call volume and then again, the wall time, which is that wait time inside of the emergency department. So the yellow, red, and green together represent total transports to all of our hospitals. So on the left here, back to January 1st, that was really when we were in the peak of our demand for healthcare. And you can see we were doing about 500 transports, which is pretty exceptional there. The yellow is all wall time that was over 10 minutes. The red is wall time that was over 30 minutes. So as we progress up until last Friday, we've had significant improvement in total ambulance transports, as well as wall time. So you can see that our wall time over 30 minutes is down to a very small amount of cases. There are some over 10 minutes, but that's manageable. We're doing a good job with that. But overall, the total EMS transport is really going the right direction, which tells me that the surge we saw in our healthcare system over the last 6 or 8 months may be resolving. So some good news there, which is nice. So behavioral health patients, and I'm not going to go too much into this because Director Bakovitz is certainly going to address this, but just really from the EMS perspective, we are seeing an increase in behavioral health EMS calls really towards I would say summer of 2021 and fall. We really saw this uptick coming out of the pandemic of behavioral health calls for EMS agencies. So what have we done with that? We've worked with Chester County MHIDD, and we are rolling out a behavioral health training for EMS providers to give them another level of how to de-escalate and how to appropriately interact with these behavioral health patients. We're excited to say that we're rolling out our first one in just a couple weeks here. That class filled within a week. So there's a lot of interest in Chester County's EMS providers to obtain that additional education on how to de-escalate and interact with behavioral health patients. So good news there, and we're already planning for a second session this year for the EMS providers. One-to-one behavioral health patients. So really what this is if a patient is a threat to themselves or others, hospitals are required to put a staff member with them, either outside their room, in their room, and that's called a one-to-one. So as we've seen this increased surge of behavioral health patients on top of 2 hospitals closing, the volume of those one-to-ones in our remaining hospital ERs has grown significantly. We've had days where we had 19 or 25 one-to-one patients in some of our ERs. And again, the concern there is that is 19 or 25 ER rooms, as well as 19 or 25 staff members that have to do those one-to-ones. So that's really significant. That directly results in bed availability and creates those wall times for EMS providers. We've had significant improvement in that. And again, I'll let Director Bakovitz talk about that when he comes on. When behavioral health patients come into our emergency departments, what we're finding is they're being boarded in the emergency departments until they can be placed in an inpatient behavioral health facility. So losing Brandywine's 60-bed inpatient facility, I've said we've had unmet needs even before Brandywine closed. That just further hindered that effort. So we're seeing, patients wait in our emergency departments for days, sometimes weeks. I'm aware of a case where a gentleman was in an ER in Chester County for 19 days before he was placed in an inpatient facility. And that ties up an ER bed. And again, that staff member for 19 days around the clock. Pediatric behavioral health, again, I mentioned CHOP King of Prussia opened. They are not an inpatient behavioral health facility. However, that has given us an option to transport pediatric behavioral health patients to. If they're going to be boarded in a hospital until they can be placed in an inpatient facility, it's preferred that they are in a children's hospital. It's probably a better environment for them. CHOP King of Prussia has been extremely supportive and helpful with that. And the benefit there has kept those patients out of our local hospitals and kept them in a children's hospital. So we're excited about that. That's been some positive out of this, getting that new hospital open. Safety concerns inside our ERs, again, dealing with these behavioral health patients. I know there have been many cases of our hospital or ER staff being injured by behavioral health patients. But I round this off with there's a lot of forward momentum and we're going in a positive direction with behavioral health. And again, I'll let Pat Bakovitz talk about that. We have a lot of good things coming. So staffing, as I mentioned, we're dealing with the staffing issues just as everybody else is. So we conducted a survey in December where we surveyed all of the EMS agencies in Chester County. We had 100% participation, which was great. So this is some of the findings out of that survey. Overall, the majority of our agencies are having difficulty recruiting new EMS providers. I personally believe that number is probably higher. I don't know that we've seen significant improvement in that since December. I know a lot of agencies are still struggling to recruit new employees as well as volunteers. And you can just see some of the breakdown there of how many openings each EMS agency has. So expenses, this is always the hot topic. And again, I know all of you are probably aware this is a concern. But just some of the things that have been developing over the last year that are important to mention here. The expenses have for many years outrun the billing revenue. So our EMS agencies are billing for their services, but they are collecting 50% of what they bill, sometimes less, sometimes a little more. The problem with that is there's not really any more revenue coming in. Our salaries are climbing rapidly, so we can retain our EMS providers. More than I've seen in my 15, 16 years of EMS in the last probably 24 months. My agency's adjusted pay scales 2 or 3 times. just to ensure we're staying within the market and we're retaining our EMS providers. So that's a really big challenge. I don't know that that's slowing down, unfortunately. General inflation, as all of you know, we are having a difficult time getting vehicles. The vehicles are more expensive. The equipment is more expensive. We're seeing all through COVID and really coming out of COVID, medical supplies and medications are difficult to get. When they are available, the prices are just astronomical. So a lot of really high prices there with some of the stuff we absolutely have to have. And unfortunately, it doesn't look like any resolution in that at this point. I talked about some of the expenses related to the hospital closures, fuel, maintenance. We have some EMS agencies putting additional staff on, especially those agencies in the South that have really long transport times. They are upstaffing. Unfortunately, they're not really covering any more calls. So it's just more expense with no more billing revenue from insurance. And one thing I'll mention here too is, every year as we renew insurance policies, vehicles, workers' comp, it's getting more and more difficult to find companies that will write for EMS agencies. And so the pool of those companies are getting smaller and the prices are going up. So these three main things are really, I think, the biggest concerns in Chester County right now, but really highlighted there by the increase in salaries to make sure we retain our EMS providers. Insurance reimbursements. So again, Medicare, Medicaid, they're fixed reimbursements. It doesn't matter how much we bill them. They're only going to pay us on their set fee schedule. On the commercial side, that was our opportunity to really offset some of those fixed insurance plans. However, we've seen this shift to high deductible commercial plans. So what we're finding is, though they're commercially insured, they have a high deductible and the ambulance bill ends up becoming a self-pay, which is a huge challenge for anybody to get a $1,000 or a $1,500 ambulance bill. So just kind of a trend we've seen over the last few years of more and more high deductible plans. It's really creating challenges to try to collect on those billings. This has been an ongoing problem for a long time in Pennsylvania. Commercial insurance companies, when the ambulance company is submitting the claim for the transport, the commercial insurance company is sending payment to the patient. And that's because they consider us out of network. They are offering to bring us in network. The challenge with that is they then tell us what they will pay us. And I can tell you there is not one 911 emergency ambulance company in the Commonwealth that is quote unquote in network because it would just bankrupt us. It's just not an option, unfortunately. So we're struggling when these patients are getting payments from their insurance companies to then hand that payment over to the ambulance company to pay for their bill. So where do we go from here? This quote here I put on here that I chuckle about, but it's worth talking about. We often hear, someone somewhere should do something. The state should, the county should. Unfortunately, we're not having a tremendous amount of success passing really impactful legislation to help EMS agencies at the state level. So most recently, House Bill 1293, that would have closed that gap where commercial insurance pays the patient instead of the EMS agency. Unfortunately, that went into a committee. There was a lot of momentum behind it and it just died in the committee. And that's what we keep finding with these impactful bills that we need. The bills are being proposed, they're coming up, our legislators are doing a great job, they're just getting stuck in these committees. So we're really having a hard time getting some success out of new legislation. You may be aware Chester County Fire and EMS Strategic Plan was published in 2020. That offers some tools for EMS agencies, fire agencies, municipalities to try to create efficiencies and kind of give us a roadmap for the future. We're happy to say we have a project manager that was paid for by grant funding for that. That person just started within the last few weeks. We did kind of slow during COVID. We are ramping back up to really get the fire and EMS strategic plan implemented and try to see some success out of that. Recruitment and retention of EMS providers, that is probably one of the #1 things right now we're working on. What we want to do is maybe take a more regional approach to that. There are some committees set up. There are some conversations happening to make sure we are recruiting and retaining our EMS providers here in Chester County. Improvement for all of this stuff, really my message today is it's going to begin at the local level. It needs to happen at the local level with our elected officials in the townships and the boroughs here. So we all need to work collaboratively. I think we've done a wonderful job, all 73 municipalities over the last few years, but we need to continue that conversation and keep that going. The EMS agencies need to work together to find efficiencies as well. We certainly have some responsibility here to make sure that we are as efficient as possible and potentially, you know, saving costs between neighbor organizations. So right at 5:26 here, so I wanted to end there. So a lot of this, the information I spoke about today was published in a white paper that the EMS Council released earlier this year. If you scan this QR code, it will bring you to that white paper if you have not read it. It's also available at chescoems.org. Feel free to read that. That really gets into the details, into the weeds about some of the stuff I spoke about today, with some contact information as well if you have more questions. So that is all I have. I'll happily answer any questions anyone has. And if not, I will turn it over to Director Bakovitz.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Pat Bakovitz, the Director of the county's Department of Human Services. I wanted to follow Chaz, and thanks Chaz for his remarks, and start with an introduction of what I'm going to discuss, which is the Chester County 988 and Mental Health Crisis Response System. First, I want to introduce myself. I'm Pat Bakovitz, the Director of the Department of Human Services, and I've been in this position since roughly August 1st of 2021. Prior to that, I was the Director of the county's Department of Community Development, and I appreciate being here today. I want to thank CCATO for the invitation. One of the things I want to sort of talk about as I start the presentation is the impact of the closure of the two hospitals, Brandywine Hospital and Jennersville, on this process, which we are starting, you know, or have started in January, and I'll get into a timeline in a second. So just getting into the impact of Brandywine Hospital and its closure on our behavioral health system, especially mental health. Brandywine Hospital really did a fantastic job of providing mental health services for our community for many years, with behavioral health professionals, psychiatrists, and really an emergency department that was equipped and trained to respond to, you know, all manners of behavioral health. Over the years, they have developed a great relationship with many of the partners in the county, and especially our county's Department of Mental Health and Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities. Just to give you a sense of their impact, for 2021, we identified 180 individuals that accessed Brandywine Hospital services when they were in crisis, that came through our Valley Creek Crisis Center. That doesn't include individuals that may have been, you know, taken to the hospital by the police or other or walked in, if you will, for those services. So quite an impact to our community. We also lost 64 inpatient beds, which obviously is impactful in a lot of different levels. 32 adult beds, 16 for eating disorder, and then an additional 16 geriatric beds. Those beds are hard to lose in light of the fact that as a county and region, we were already sort of behind. We're short of those inpatient beds. So quite an impact to our behavioral health system. Now, we got some good news within last month that Bryn Mawr, which is outside the county, but still within the region, added 20 additional inpatient beds, which again is good news. And I guess I would sort of pause here and just note that there is a tremendous amount of work that's happening to stand up inpatient beds, which I think hopefully will lead to some positive things as we move forward, because it's an important need. Chaz mentioned some of the collaboration in the meetings, and I would just echo those comments. Certainly spearheaded by the county's Department of Emergency Services, and the partnership with the hospitals, Chester County Hospital, Paoli Hospital, and Phoenixville, has been extremely important, as has obviously Chaz's group, the Chester County EMS Council, to really begin to track the distribution of behavioral health patients across those 3 hospitals as best we can. I think early on, after the closures, Chester County Hospital was receiving the vast majority of the referrals or the patients. So we really want to keep an eye on that and make sure that Paoli and Phoenixville are supporting as well. There's other mental health system challenges that I think are worth noting. I mentioned how the impact of the Brandywine Hospital closure has impacted the other emergency departments at the other 3 hospitals. Our current crisis program, Valley Creek Crisis, is struggling to respond to some of the crises that are happening now, for some of the same reasons that I guess other industries are facing: the staffing capacity and hiring challenges, and then also the increased and more complex mental health needs of residents, which we're seeing as we go through the pandemic. And some of those, and I'll speak to this later, but some of that is adolescent and youth patients that obviously has a tremendous need in our community as we move forward. Then the fact that we do not have a health crisis stabilization center, which provides 23-hour observation beds and or medical clearance services, as other communities have. We sort of had that a little bit with Brandywine Hospital and the role they played, and certainly when that closed, that created that void for that service. And then obviously I mentioned before the limited availability of inpatient and outpatient services resulted in long wait times for service, which is impacting the emergency departments in a significant way as well, which Chaz spoke about. So on a parallel path to the hospital closures, and even before the hospital closures, before we became aware of the hospital closures at the end of 2021, we were aware that Congress had passed in 2020 a bill requiring 988 across the country, which would serve as a simple 3-digit contact for mental health crisis services. Obviously, a large component, a big component, an important component of that is suicide prevention, but it really runs the continuum of mental health services that someone may need. We started our process last summer when we put out a request for proposal to select a consultant to work with us here locally to develop a 988 mental health crisis system, if you will, which, as indicated on the slide here, includes really 3 pillars. The call center, the 988 number is one, and obviously an important component. But the other 2 components is a mobile response team that would, engage, if you will, the individual in the crisis. And then what was mentioned before, a crisis stabilization center. So it includes all 3 of those pillars, if you will. So in a goal statement, you can see this here is to develop and implement a more comprehensive, effective, and accessible mental health crisis response system for all Chester County residents. there's a lot of components to that goal that I think is important to emphasize in Chester County. Obviously, comprehensive and effective is important. The size of Chester County really speaks to the accessible aspect of it, but also the diversity of our county. We want to make sure that this system is available to really all individuals that need this service, and that's an important component. I wanted to also share some of the participants on our mental health crisis response system committee, because I think it's important to note we want to be comprehensive in the way that we structure our new system. As you see from the listing, I'll just highlight some groups. Obviously, we have our county partners, both from the human services field, along with the criminal justice, which obviously would include Deb Ryan, our district attorney, but also include Linda Cox and Candy Craig from our Department of Mental Health and Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities, both great partners and great leaders. We also include, from a municipal perspective, two police chiefs, Scott Alexander from Euclid Township and Howard Holland from Downingtown, who also represents the Chester County Chiefs of Police Association. This system and the connection to the criminal justice system is really important to us, that we make sure that it's really responsive to that group and to some of the challenges that they faced over the years, that as we build this new system, that it can be certainly responsive. We also have representatives from the Chester County Hospital, Mike Duncan and Kyle Finnegan, who leads their emergency department. Obviously what they're going through now in working with individuals with behavioral health needs is important to take into their consideration. And then the final person I would note from the list is George Fiore. I'd mentioned George obviously is the leader of the Chester County Intermediate Unit, but we work and have worked over the last few years very closely with George and his teams, and really all the school districts in Chester County, to make sure that we're aligned, coordinated with the needs of youth and adolescents. We are connected to actually some of the action teams that George and Representative Chris Sappy have established to come up with some solutions for that population, which I think is really important. So as we talk about our mental health crisis response system, it's for adults, but it's also for youth. As I think George would explain if he was on the call, the schools have the kids from 8 to 3 during the day, but not at night, not on weekends, not in the summer when they're disengaged from the school. So it's really paramount that our systems are aligned, coordinated, and that when a young person needs services, they can access them. And their family. So did want to sort of talk through that a little bit and explain that there is coordination with our youth, with the needs of our youth in our community. From our project methodology and timeline, we began our really in-depth mental health crisis response system committee work in January with a kickoff meeting, and between now and then, between January and now, late, March 24th, our consultant, Jason Alexander of Capacity for Change, has done a lot of interviews, connected with committee members, sort of in a one-on-one setting, to get a sense as to what they feel the needs of the system should be. We had a meeting just this week where we presented some of the preliminary findings to the group, which in a good way is pretty consistent from committee member to committee member. What we will do now, as we get into April, we will start to do some deeper dives on the type of system we will have. Fortunately, there are other mental health crisis response systems in the country right now already up and running that we're going to take a look at, and the staff have already started to review and to see what might be a good fit, if you will, for Chester County. Obviously, we'll make it our own. There's much about Chester County that's unique in terms of the way we do things. So I think it'll be important to look at some of those opportunities, some of those systems, if you will, and then use the committee to complete the design of what that will look like. We are working hard to have implementation begin, certainly for the call center and our response team, by the mid-July due date. The stabilization center may be a little bit more challenging, and we'll talk about that in an upcoming slide. So I want to talk about, in these next 3 slides, each of the 3 components, if you will, beginning with the 988 implementation. Ideally, the call center would be available for 24/7, be around the clock, 365 days of the year. There'd be the ability for text and chat for residents to connect and to communicate. We certainly want to make sure that that 988 is equitable and accessible to residents regardless of age, race, gender, disability status, income, geographic location, English proficiency. So our staff really need to be strong, if you will, in their ability to engage and to work with the individual that's calling in. We will have a strong working partnership with 911, with law enforcement, with our first responders and other emergency service personnel. I think that's obviously a really important component to what this system will look like. I would also add that I think, going back to the timeline, and as I talk about this point, we very much anticipate keeping the committee together past the July implementation date to get feedback, to see how things are going, to make adjustments as we need to based on those individuals' experience with the system, because they're going to experience it in many cases more than we will as county staff. So their input's going to be extremely important. I think that the bullet about making it equitable and accessible to everyone in the county, that last slide is really critical in terms of the marketing, the community outreach, the public education. I know, for example, Jessica's presentation around the internet access, or some of the limitations in Southern Chester County, is a reminder in many ways that we really have to look at a lot of different ways to market. Social media may work for some populations, but for other populations that don't have that as a resource, at least right now, we really have to think through making sure that if someone does have a mental health crisis, they can access this service. The second component of the system, the mobile crisis response, we're looking at it being at least one 24/7 team, mobile crisis response team, which can deploy to emergency departments, police stations, really wherever they're needed in the community upon the call. We're looking at, because of the size of the county, some of the transportation challenges that that we have, at least from Southern Chester County to the rest of the county, to possibly have more than one team. That's something obviously we'll look at. In terms of staffing, we are looking at least one clinician as part of the team, and probably a second person that would make up the team, that could either be a peer specialist, someone with lived experience, or a social worker, or even a medic, depending on how our analysis of these next couple months go, and what types of service we think we need to embed within that crisis response team. We want to work with law enforcement, but at times disconnect so that the team is engaging the person with mental health crisis, sort of separate from the law enforcement, but certainly in close communication. And again, that's a bullet point that I think we will talk out more and more with certainly our committee members, Chief Alexander and Holland, and their insight on that. And then obviously because of the large number of Spanish-speaking Chester Countyans, we would want to have at least one member of the team be bilingual. And then from a crisis stabilization as the third component, and you know, arguably the most challenging and the biggest need, it would be a center. It'd be a location where individuals could go to really stabilize. I think that's the key word in the name, stabilization. It would have a 23-hour observation bed, but the individuals wouldn't stay for just 23 hours. It wouldn't be a long-term stay either, but it would be, you know, a week, 10 days, if necessary, to stabilize the individual that's going through a mental health crisis, make sure they're connected to appropriate resources, whether that's an outpatient service at some point in their stay, or whether they need to transition to an inpatient service or anything in between. Really, this center would connect them to the appropriate resource that they need. Again, we're looking at, you know, have one in southern Chester County and one in the northern part of the county or the central part of the county. And ideally, this crisis stabilization center would be close to a medical or a hospital setting, although that's not, you know, an absolute requirement. Obviously, as we're talking about individuals or organizations or hospitals coming back into Brandywine or Jennersville, we'd love to see them embed a crisis stabilization center in there. That would be fantastic. But I would say to this group that if you do have locations that you think would be, you know, a great location, a nice site, you know, whether it's where it is in terms of transportation, ease of access, etc., let us know, let me know, and we would love to follow up with you on that, because I think, again, this is going to be something that is going to be needed, but I think also challenging to ultimately stand up. So we are early on, or I should say early on, but we're midway through our 6-month planning process, really looking to hone in on what our mental health crisis response system will look like, certainly over the next couple months, so that we can be, you know, receiving those calls appropriately come mid-July of this year. But I really appreciate the opportunity to present where we are with this, and I think Chaz will open it up for questions if that's okay.
Pat, Chaz, thank you. I do have one question. There was a question in the chat earlier, if we could get the slides or the PowerPoint and post them to our website. I'm sure you can help us with that. So if you could get those to Ernie, that would be great.
Absolutely. We will certainly do that.
Yes, and thank you. Any other questions? If you want to raise your hand in the chat. Okay, I am not seeing any questions, and we are a little ahead of schedule, but we don't have everyone in the breakout room. So if in fact we can, I guess at this time, open the box on your screen and choose the room and go into the breakout session, that would be great.